We now have all of the Fantastic Four heroes leaked, including some of their abilities. Thanks to the Chinese version of Marvel Rivals leaking that in Season 1 of Marvel Rivals, which should be releasing on January the 10th, we know that there's going to be 4 Fantastic Four heroes releasing, which is of course Human Torch, The Thing, Sue Storm or Invisible Woman, and then we've got Mr. Fantastic himself. And we already have 3 of the characters' full abilities leaked, and only 1 character with just their ability names leaked, which is Invisible Woman. And I've even ported a model. Of course, though, we do know what she looks like. For Invisible Woman, we only have her ability names leaked. However, I've come up with an ability description based on the ability name, and I'm pretty much sure this is going to be the order of the abilities and how they're going to work. So let's start off with her attack, which is Psychic Strike, and this allows her to send out a powerful punch that is infused with psionic energy. Of course, this isn't exactly what the attack ability is going to be, but it is the closest I can get with just the ability name. And let's move on to a passive, which is Invisible Energy. And let me tell you, I think the devs are definitely planning on Invisible Woman to be going invisible. Otherwise, what is the point of her even being added? And for the passive description, I've put it as every time Invisible Woman deals damage, her bar goes up, her invisibility energy bar. After it's full, she can then use her psionic invisibility. Pressing the psionic invisibility allows her to go invisible for a short amount of time. Now, how long will that be? Well, it's probably going to be based on how much of the bar you use. So if you only use a tiny bit of the bar, you'll have it for less than a second. And if you use a lot of the bar, you might have it for around 3 seconds. Now, for her ability named Psychic Aid, this allows her to use her psychic powers to heal allies. Her L-shift ability is named Psychic Vortex, and for this I've put it as she sends out an AoE ability that pulls enemies into a point that slows them down. If an ally is trapped within the vortex, it heals them instead of slowing them, so the enemies can't get out and the allies are being healed, and while they're being healed they can just go and eliminate the enemies in this vortex. Finally, for her ultimate, I've put it as Psycho Field. This allows Invisible Woman to charge up her psychic energy, and then she floats up into the air, making her invisible, and then she pushes out all enemies that are within range of her, which would be super overpowered. Of course, this is a description I've made, so it's probably going to be completely different. However, it would make sense because once all enemies are pushed out of the way, you can then use your Psychic Aid to go and heal your allies. I am really confident though that the psionic invisibility and invisible energy is literally 1-to-1, and it's how it's going to work in the game. Now let's move on to the next character that was leaked, which is the Thing. However, before I continue, could you consider subscribing? It helps out a lot. And honestly, the Thing is a character I'm looking forward to, and we have all of his abilities and names leaked. However, we don't have a screenshot of him in game, so I've made some UI here like what I did with Invisible Woman. And for the Thing's first attack, it's named Combination Punch, and this allows him to send quick and continuous punches, similar to how the Hulk sends his punches. Then his next attack is going to be Thunderbolt Punch, and this allows him to charge up a punch and then deliver a devastating punch. So he charges up his punch and then he does a lot of damage to the enemy he's at. For his passive, it's named Solid as a Rock, and for this, it makes the Thing immune to knockback and other displacement effects. Super useful, and of course it makes sense. He is going to be a Vanguard, by the way. We have got that confirmed by leaks, and it's kind of obvious he's pretty big. For his E ability, it's named Battlefield Support, and this allows the Thing to jump towards teammates, and then he adds a damage reduction to them and yourself. For his L shift ability, it's named Furious Charge. The Thing will continue his charge forward, lifting up enemies in his path, leaving behind a Smisic zone that prohibits displacement, so that means you won't be able to get knocked back within this zone. Really like this ability, and characters like Iron Man are going to be able to beam enemies when they're lifted up into the air. For his Q ability, it's named Slam Moment, and this allows him to use tremendous force to knock all enemies in front of you into the air. I can see people doing a lot of combos with the L shift and Q ability. So what do you think about the Thing coming to Marvel Rivals? Honestly, it's going to be super cool. The next hero that is coming is Human Torch, and we have a full-on look at his UI within the game and even a look at his image here. Now, I've ported a Human Torch model as Iron Man, into Marvel Rivals. So I'm going to show some concept gameplay of what Human Torch's abilities could look like. At the same time, I'm going to go over his abilities. Now, let's start off with Human Torch's first ability, which is going to be his primary attack, and this is going to be known as Fire Cluster. This allows him to launch forward a splittable fireball. So as you can see here in the gameplay, he sends out this fireball, will split itself, and then the fireball will then go and hit 2 enemies. Now, for his L-shift ability, it's named Plasma Body, and this just allows him to fly in the air. Here's a look at some gameplay here. Of course, he's Iron Man in this case. His next ability is named Flaming Meteor. Now, while using the Plasma Body and going up in the air, you'll be able to dive towards the ground and then stun nearby enemies, similar to how Venom's dive works. His next ability is named Blazing Blast, and this allows him to launch a fireball to create a flame field. So as you can see in the concept gameplay, you send out a fireball, it creates a flame field, and then if you use your Pyro Prison ability, which looks like it's going to be able to allow you to connect up 3 flame fields to form a fire wall, and the best way to explain it, gonna look like a Phoenix wall from Valorant probably, and then if you walk into that firewall, it's going to deal damage to enemies, and probably Human Torch and his allies won't deal damage from this wall. Finally, for his ultimate, it's named Supernova, and it's going to allow the Human Torch to unleash shockwaves to deal damage to enemies within range. During the activation, the flame field will transform into a fire tornado. So here's a look at the shockwave gameplay, best I could do. So he sends out a couple of shockwaves, and then here's a look at what his fire tornadoes could look like. You send them out everywhere, they're going to cause absolute chaos in the... Finally, the last Fantastic Four hero coming to the game is of course Mr. Fantastic himself. So let's go over his abilities. We have a look at his model abilities. Here's a look at his UI. We know he's going to be a 3-star difficulty hero. Now, unfortunately, with a lot of these heroes, we don't know what class they're going to be in, but apparently Mr. Fantastic is going to be a duelist, even though his abilities are very much like a Vanguard. Let's start off with Mr. Fantastic's attack, which is going to be known as Elastic Punch, and this allows him to stretch out a forward punch to attack enemies. This is almost going to be similar to Groot's attack, so you're going to be able to do some punches from long range. Super cool. Now, for his passive named Elastic Strength, this is a long one, but it's actually really good. Using your skills, it generates elasticity, boosting attack power. Now, when you reach full elasticity, it triggers an inflated state. Here's a look at it, and that inflated state restores health and boosts even more damage. Super cool. Really like this idea. Let's move on to his right click ability named Rubber Grip. This allows him to extend his arms forward to entangle hit enemies. Then he presses his left quick ability to yank 2 more enemies, and then while they're all yanked, you're probably going to be able to throw them around, and that's going to deal some damage to them. His E ability is going to be named Flexible Elongate. This allows him to select a target and dash to it, dealing damage to enemies and granting bonus health to allies. His L shift ability is Reflective Rubber, and allows him to stretch his body to absorb damage before launching stored damage back in a targeted direction. And honestly, these abilities make him sound like a Vanguard. I don't know why he's going to be a duelist. And finally, his ultimate is going to be named Brainiac Bounce, and this allows him to leap and smash knocking back enemies within range. Upon hitting an enemy, you can leap again up to 6 times. He's going to have some crazy abilities when he releases. Which character are you most excited for? Let me know in the comments.